If you believe in something, if you want to do something, if you're interested in something, then go ahead and pursue it. Results matter. Yes, they do, but how you get there is where the personal growth happens. Growth mindset isn't always about growing. It's all about what are you learning and evaluating along the way.
What are like 3 top skills?
Integrity, competency, and communication. If you want to go fast, then you have to slow down to speed up.
So how would you find an external mentor? Welcome to another episode of Perspective Now. Today it's going to be in English, although my guest is Scottish, so if you struggle, please put the auto captions on. My today guest is Fraser Gault.
Hi.
Am I pronouncing it right?
Yeah.
And Fraser was an IBMer, so ex-IBMer.
No such thing. No such thing as an ex-IBMer. Seriously, I'll tell you about that later.
We met in finance back in 2015, I think it was, or maybe earlier. But you left IBM in 2016, right?
That's right, yeah.
And he started his own business, but it's in a special area, and there's like a mentoring, coaching, personal growth, right?
That's right.
So I thought it would be a good idea to talk about this, how you can actually be more accountable for your career and how you should look after yourself and not expect others. So, welcome again.
Thanks.
Obvious question. How long have you been with IBM, or were you with IBM, and when did it all start?
I think it was 11 years and 9 months. I'm not quite sure if I made it for 12 years, and I really don't remember. But it all started, like all good stories start. It all started the morning after a celebration when I just transitioned away from a services career, and I was looking for a new job, and it was on my way to Glasgow, or maybe from, I can't remember, when I looked out the window and there's this big building with IBM written on it, and I was on a train, and I thought to myself, IBM, and immediately thought that, I've always wanted to work there, which is a good cliche, which I never wanted to work there. But then I thought to myself, if I'm going to start or restart a new career, that I should do it with someone that's got money, and IBM had a ton of money in those days, and in such a local proximity to what I knew in Scotland, and a big campus, which it's like a self-contained area. It's the same as the self-contained military base, and I thought, that's probably a good fit. I'll apply for a job there, and I got myself a customer fulfillment role where I think it was an order administrator, but don't quote me on that, where I thought this is going to be cool, going to validate all these orders. So it's an order validation specialist, and I got 2 pieces of paper. No computer. 2 pieces of paper. There's a customer purchase order. Here's a checklist. And is there a PO number? Yeah. And after I think about 3 weeks, I spoke to my team leader and said, I really need to do something different because I'm going to die from boredom. I know it's important, and my career just kind of went from there. And so that was back in Greenock in Scotland in 2004, I think it was.
Mm-hmm. So what happened that you came to Slovakia?
I had this kind of, still do, have this work ethic where if you're going to do something, figure out what it is and do it well. I don't mean do it great, don't be amazing, just do it well. And I always was curious as to how does this checklist turn into an actual product. And a lot of my colleagues were, content with just doing their thing, and that was good for them. But for me, I was always curious as to figure out why, what happened. How does a 92P 73A, which in those days was a mouse with still the rollerball in it, that's how long ago that was. How does that become a mouse, and where does that go? So I just kind of followed the process. I mean, it was written down, but I just kind of, who's the process owner and where do they sit, and went curiously looking around. And in the process, I got to know a lot of people. And I think, okay, so how does it get sold? And I met the sales guy, and I just kind of said, hey, you're selling for this account that I'm the fulfillment guy for. can I come to one of your sales meetings? And there was this silence, and I just thought maybe I've broken some sacred rule. And they said, yeah, sure. That was a match made in heaven. So I got to move up fulfillment and became a global account fulfillment manager for one account there, where I worked with a sales guy, product manager, engineer, and just looked at the build. And then there was the divestiture of the PC division to Lenovo, which came as a shock to a lot of people. You know, it was a lot. So we had transitioned into Lenovo, new business, new things. And then they looked for volunteers to help start their fulfillment process here in Slovakia. So I was like, yeah, sure, I can go there. And the boss was like, you know where it is? I'm like, yeah, it's not Czechoslovakia anymore. So I came over initially for 3 weeks to train people on order validation. So after 3 days, they knew what they were doing. And then it progressed and the organization grew. And they just kept asking me to stay. So I don't know if that was because I was any good, or they just didn't want me to go back to the Greenock office, because I had this kind of reputation of getting things done. And when there was a roadblock, I either just bulldozed my way through it. But I think with retrospect, probably I bulldozed too many times through things, but still, stuff got done. And then when it came to end of assignment, which was after 2 years, I could go back to IBM in the UK or Lenovo in the UK. It was take your pick. But to be honest, I'd kind of gotten used to the lifestyle here in Slovakia, where you know, I'm not from Glasgow, but I grew up around that part of the world, and you don't have this kind of community thing where your kids can run around in the street at 10 o'clock at night. That doesn't happen. But we had that here, and so I felt much more kind of, well, I don't really feel at home in Scotland because I haven't lived there for a long time, and might as well start here. So that's why I started here.
So what jobs did you change since then while you were in IBM?
So customer fulfillment. Then I was the global account manager when I was at Lenovo, and then the IBM assignee thing out to Lenovo ended, and I could become the Lenovo contractor through Adecco, or I could go back to the UK and become an IBMer through Adecco, or I could stay here. And it happened that IBM being over in Vivo, I think its new name is, but it's always going to be Millennium Tower 2 for me. They were from, that location leader was from Greenock, so I just kind of same-timed her, like I knew her. I never met her, but I just kind of same-timed her. And said, can I have a come and chat? I'd like to, you know, lead one of the organizations. And I thought I was going to be a team leader, but she put me through, she appointed me as a people manager and put me through the LDP program. And then I became a people manager of software customer fulfillment, CBS Z series. So yeah, I just kind of, that was then. And then I joined a cross-party project to talk about people development. And at that time, Paul Burt was running the internal management or learning CF training team, and I kind of fancied joining that. But to do that, I had to figure out how the whole IBM learning thing started, so I volunteered for projects. I was on a fixed-term contract, so I'd pretty much done everything to do with Z-Series, and then we're looking at software renewals, contracts, all these other things, and I had the option to move to a different unit within customer fulfillment. But to be honest, it wasn't going to be growth for me. It wasn't development. It was just different experience, and I was very impatient to progress. So I joined this cross-party project, and we looked at how we do leadership development, and then I was asked to present it. If you want to really invest in leadership development, it's less to do with classroom or the personification of theory, because, you know, IBMers can read. What I proposed was that we should have a safe space for actual doing the job, making a mess of it, because that's where you learn the quickest, and then redeploying. So they offered me a role over in GTS Finance. So I went to finance. Never thought I'd work there. That worked out all right. And 2 roles in finance, DSO manager and finance and planning manager. And then I was there for, I think, 3 years. And I met a guy called Gary Bernstein from the US, who phoned me up one day and said, got a task for you. I'm like, okay, what is it? I want you to look at learning. I was like, okay, deja vu. Because there's going to be a learning position for Slovakia coming up, and I think it might be interesting for you. If you like what you're doing there, maybe you can apply. Okay, either I'm good at learning or I'm bad at finance, one of the two. So I applied for the job and I got it. And then it turned out that it wasn't a local learning manager role, it was a regional one. Then I met a bunch of different people across Central Eastern Europe, all talking about the same thing. So we had formalized programs. All of the learning management became integrated online. So e-learning, do the e-learning, then you do the live workshop later, and then you've got external providers. So ran that.
But had you had any previous experience in learning, or how did this opportunity came to you?
Yeah, because back in the military, it's one of the things that I'd done is going through that particular process was I'd excelled, which is something that I'd never really thought I would do, in learning something really quite quickly, but being able to explain it in a simple way, and then doing it. So there was credibility, and I was able to see through a lot of, because the conventional military isn't unlike some parts of IBM in terms of structure of first, second, and it's very kind of formalized. And that works mostly, but there are a lot of times where it doesn't. And I found myself in an organization that didn't want that in the military. They wanted people that can navigate clearly and with confidence, and then train others. And part of that job was involving training others in Latin America and the Middle East. And so I had some experience in being an instructor. And then my observations, where I took in my teams, I really focused on, probably to my detriment, I focused more on what are people learning by their experience rather than what are they actually executing. So for me, performance isn't necessarily about results. Results are important, but how you get to those results with confidence are far more important. So I focused on the confidence area, and that meant my scorecards were redder than the red desert. I was just not comfortable for a while, but then they started to pick up and were mostly green and orange at that point. So I figured it was worthwhile, the investment. And then that kind of attitude just kind of carries on. So if you want to go fast, it's a cliche, right? If you want to go fast, then you have to slow down to speed up.
So can you say that learning is your passion now?
Yeah, except languages. Yeah.
So what do you do for a living?
So I would say the first thing I am is primarily a mentor, because showing somebody to do something and then watching them do it and then correcting it is probably the simplest thing you can do. It doesn't mean it's easy, but it's there. Then I took on coaching, not as a vocation, but more of a skill or a tool to use. I'm a psychometrics practitioner, but I'll come back to that. And we develop, so I founded a company, a consulting firm that goes along and diagnoses what's wrong with your company or your team. Comes up with a solution. Sometimes that might be a one-off learning intervention for a group, or it might be one-to-one. But we specialize in providing tailored, solution-focused events for companies. Sometimes, for example, we work with IBM in delivering a 5 months intensive leadership development program that is focused on sort of key issues that the business unit needs or is likely to anticipate. So it's like a boot camp for first-line managers who go through all of this high expectations, and there's a very steep learning curve. So, we usually start with 12, and sometimes we finish with 12, but most of the time people drop out because it's demanding or too demanding, and they realize that maybe I want to do something different.
You mentioned military, so you think also that this part of your life gave you a good base for this mentoring and coaching?
I'm not so sure it was that. I think it was the one thing that it did give was a lot of responsibility, but it held you accountable. And then the team that I worked in, we were very much accountable to one another. There's a big difference when you're working with someone and you make a mistake and you can rub it out, you can change it. Or if you make a mistake in a situation where somebody's going to get hurt or you're going to get somebody killed, or that's the worst thing that can happen. So you really, you train properly, and you have to be honest with yourself about who you really are, not sort of believe your own. Because it's very easy for someone to come along and say you're really good at something, but it's very, very different to feel that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's about accountability for myself. I learned that at a very young age. I was raised by my grandparents. We had that ethic at home. It's like, it's your responsibility, and if it doesn't happen, that's on you. Mm-hmm. Which at the time I hated, but it kind of set me up for life, to take accountability for what I'm going to do. There'll be a lot of people that help me in it, but if it goes wrong, then I can't simply blame other people. I'm part of it. It's the one thing that, as I say to a lot of people, what's the one thing that connects everything good and bad in your life? And it's you and your attitude towards it. And that doesn't mean that I'm this ultra positive, yeah, we can, because that drives me insane. I think if everybody's ultra positive about everything, that's a symptom. I think it's okay to be annoyed and bad-tempered, and these are natural human traits. So I would say that the accountability element, and where I've held myself accountable for a lot of things. But that doesn't mean I haven't failed. I haven't failed my own standards. I've done that more times than I care to remember or admit. There are a few things that I would have, when I'm in my younger days, I would have certainly thought about. If I had a time machine, I'd go back and change it. But as I got older, I realized that those are things that shape you. And yesterday, there's a psychologist called Adler that nobody really knows about. But one of the things I learned when I studied psychology was that you can't do anything about yesterday. It doesn't mean it's not relevant. The experience is there, it's in you. But it's what you do with it today for intention of tomorrow that matters. And that sounds like some nice Christopher Nolan saying or something like that in a movie, but it is actually true.
So how would you relate this accountability to personal growth, or rather career progress?
I would try to sum it up and maybe make a statement and go from there. Not sure I had enough coffee for that question, but that's the first rule of IBM: stay caffeinated. I think if you believe in something, if you want to do something, if you're interested in something, then go ahead and pursue it, right? The worst thing that can happen is you find out you're not interested and you're not any good at it. Okay. I think people have this belief, though, that if they're interested in something and they're going to go try it, they should be good at it. Well, I think the first time you try anything, you're going to suck. And I think if you're honest with yourself, I tried skateboarding and snowboarding and decided that even though I had all the gear and I looked pretty good, I spend most of my time sitting down. Because if you sit down, you don't fall down, right? So you either are interested in something or you're not. It is that binary. Getting good at it, that's where the perseverance comes from. If you believe in it enough, then you'll go do it. If you're curious enough, then you just have to find it. So I think curiosity, then interest, then a desire to know more, and then kind of constantly reassess, am I enjoying this? And enjoyment is about how I feel about it, if I'm fulfilled by it. The risk, and I fell into this trap early in my IBM career, was that people kept telling me I was very good at something. And I was like, that's great, I'm riding a dopamine wave because, it's good to get a good review, right? It's good to get a good PBC. Or checkpoint now. But that's a different view. That's an external view. And how you feel about yourself internally, if that's not aligned with that, then you're living someone else's life. You're not living your own. You're not honest with yourself. And that's the hardest thing to be, is really honest with yourself. So I kind of always looked at my view on, okay, I might be good at it, but I'm not feeling fulfilled by this. Do I enjoy it? Some days, not really other days. And just, what is it that really fulfills me? What is that, and where is it? Not what job should I do, what pay will I get? Just starting with, I really enjoy these types of things. Where can I do that?
But if you relate this to IBM, you spent here a decade, right? Yeah. So if a job is not fulfilling you, what should you do? Where should you start? Should you talk to your manager? Should you find a mentor? Should you talk to some colleagues?
Well, I think the best thing you can do is find a mentor. And well, no, the first thing you have to do is have a conversation with yourself, right? An honest conversation. Because those are empowering. Because if you're not denying anything to yourself, then all you've got is confidence and you can only get better at something. Then I would find yourself a mentor. And that's a difficult thing because a lot of people look for a mentor in their manager, and that's not the manager's role. yes, they mentor you in some aspects of your role, but not necessarily in your career. They can only pick out things that you might be interested in. But you've really got to be the driving force behind saying, I'm interested in these sorts of things, and I'm going to go a look around. And I think a lot of people make the mistake because we really don't have that much time. And here's the thing, there's never been a history of IBMers ever having time, right? You have to make the time or sacrifice something in order to go and be curious about what's here. And I call it the footprint. What's the footprint that this company has wherever? And that kind of resonates from my first day in IBM, where the location director, Peter Logue, stood up and said, no matter what it is that you are interested in, IBM's got a department for that somewhere. So I don't have a map for it. People think I do, but I don't have a map for it. But you can go and draw that map. And I was like, what a cliche, you know, waiting for the round of applause and the yee-haw stuff. But he was right. And so I just stayed curious. I enjoyed working with people. I enjoyed seeing people learn. I enjoyed, that was real satisfaction about seeing them learn. Not, I feel good about seeing some other people learn, so I'm going to feel good about myself by helping other people learn. My intention was they're learning, and I'm learning as well as about my role. So I always kind of picked a role where I didn't know that part of the business, but what I did have was a transferable skill. You know, I understand how to deal with people. I can communicate effectively. I can make decisions under pressure. When I make the wrong decision, I can change my mind and swallow my pride. I can admit my mistakes, even though that's hard. I can own up to that, even though that's hard. Those are transferable skills that apply to any role, anywhere, which are somewhat underrated, I think. And then just, you know, stay curious, go out, find it. And once you've found it, then network like crazy. This thing it always kind of astounded me, where you have this captive audience of number of people who are sitting in an office or at the end of a Slack channel or Blue Pages. And there's this thing about the thing that kind of, you know, when I made a joke that you never really leave the company. I don't know how many people that I worked with throughout the world in IBM that I never met, but I'm still friends with. I still stay in touch with. There was one time I was in Mexico and I'd missed a plane, and I didn't really know where to go other than back to the hotel I was staying at and try and get another place to stay. And there's an IBM office not far from there. And I remember going over to them and saying, "Hey, look, you know, I'm an IBMer. Can you give me some advice?" And the security guards looking at me with a stone cold face, and I'm thinking maybe I'm not going to get some help here. And there was for life of me, can't remember his name, but he's like, "Yeah, sure, come on in. This is what we do here." So, you know, once you get past the security of, you know, who are you and your identification and all that, then the door was thrown open. So it was like this huge cliched family, right? This cliched network that you have to leverage that I think people don't. And that's sad, because there's only different, right? I mean, I'm not talking about diversity and inclusion. I'm talking about acceptance, that people do things differently. There's always going to be a different company agenda. There's always going to be a different priority. But if you don't prioritize yourself, and you're expecting someone else to prioritize for you, I think that's unfair. That's a pressure you're putting on those other people that isn't right. And that's where you're removing the ownership and putting it onto someone. And I get why that happens. You know, you've got a very structured environment where you have approvals for everything. You have a very clearly defined process for everything, except this. Because it's assumed that as an individual, you would take ownership of your own stuff. And remarkably, most people do in their private life, but just something happens when they walk through that doorway at the office that it changes. And that's a product of institutionalization, and it happens in every single sort of institution. And it happens in the military, it happens in any other corporate. You can change the badge and the same thing happens. But I think it's about staying human and really focused on, it's okay to be selfish. We are inherently selfish. Prioritize you for a little bit and have a look at, this is what I want to do. But at the same time, you have to stay flexible. And if I think, you know, did I imagine that I'd want to work in IBM in finance? No. My first few weeks in finance were overwhelming. I had absolutely no idea what people were talking about. I joined, I think I joined in the closing. Yeah, it was year-end closing I joined. So everybody knows what, it looks like everybody knows what they're doing. I have no idea what everybody's doing. I have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing. My teams know what they're doing, and it can be discerning and unsettling. But I think if you just get through that pain, then focus on what it is that you enjoy, what you want to do. Taking that sideways thing that everybody thought was sideways for me, going to finance, and a lot of people were kind of raising eyebrows when I moved away from customer fulfillment to finance, who were kind of perceived as the enemy. I'm not really sure why, but they were perceived that way. That seemed like a sideways move for me, and I questioned whether I shouldn't just go back. And I had the option to go back, but, you know, if you go back and look at IBM's Centennial video on YouTube, it's got a big word in there called progress. And progression backwards is regression, not growth. And that's, you know, I guess that's a growth mindset. That's what that means. Try that. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, then do something else. You can always change your mind. You only got one life. Might as well use it.
Yeah. So let's go down from theory to a practical example. So imagine I am an accountant and I want to become a software engineer.
Okay.
So you mentioned I should maybe talk to myself first, find a mentor. What's next?
No, I go back and ask, why do you want to do that?
It's a passion of mine.
Okay.
I do it in my free time.
You're doing it in your free time. Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. So you believe in it then? Mm-hmm. All right. Any idea where you want to do that?
IBM.
You want to do that at IBM? Mm-hmm. All right. So what's the value proposition you're providing to the company right now? You're good at what you do, you're in that role, you're in accounting.
Yeah, but
okay, so
it's not fulfilling anymore.
Okay, so it's not fulfilling for you. That's fine. Mm-hmm. You've learned what you've learned and you've peaked. Okay, mm-hmm. That's good. You want to be a software engineer. First thing that I'm looking for in terms of success, I have 3 pillars. Yes, I want to do it, also known as motivation. Mm-hmm. I can't do it because I've got the skills, right? And the do element, which means I've got the environment, right? So in this case, what you've just mentioned, if you're the accountant, you've got the desire, mm-hmm. Yes. You don't have you have the experience, but you maybe not have the desired skill for a particular role, and you're not in the environment to do it yet. So most people will then go, right, okay, I've got this, and I'm going to learn this, and then I'm going to find the environment. What I really recommend is start at the end. Go find, assuming I want to do it, pick up the phone and talk to the nearest software engineer you can, or better still, go speak to them, and go, what do you do every day? Then go speak to their team leader or manager and say, hey, listen, if I clear it with my manager, can I come and shadow you guys for a day, 2 days, whatever, just to get a taste of what it is that you're actually doing? Then you go back to your boss and say, hey, listen, I was talking to them. I want to do this. I'll cover my own work. Because, you know, while you're away, your work's not magically getting done. You still have to cover it yourself. And this is just a mature way of doing it. Cover that, mitigate that risk, and go find out if you actually want to do that. Because there's what it looks like on the outside, what you think it looks like on the outside, what you think it looks like on the inside of doing that role, and then what it's actually like doing on that role. And the people who are in that role are the ones to tell you what it's really like. So do that.
Yeah, I remember we used to have this program, Day in the Life.
Day in the Life, that's right, yeah.
So that was a really good experience for people to get a taste of the job.
Sure, yeah.
I'm not sure whether that still exists, but it was really good. So you mentioned that you should take the first step, which is like talk to people, right? Sure. Find someone. So yeah. Network?
Absolutely. How do you create a network? And everybody's like, there must be some scientific map for that. And I'm pretty sure that there's a consulting firm out there that will tell you how to do that. But it's really quite simple. You just open up Blue Pages, type in software engineer, Bratislava, or wherever, and go talk to them. And then talk to a bunch of other people. I always kind of joked, if you want to solve IBM's biggest problem, all you got to do is go to the pub on a Friday. Because everybody there knows the solution. The answers are always in the room. In fact, that's one of our taglines in our business, is that the answers to these problems that the team has are all in the room. We just have to open it up to enough debate, discussion, argument to thrash out the solution. It's just people don't want to debate and argue because, we're all friends here. Debate and argument between friends is really important. It shows a sign of trust and respect for one another.
Would you dare to approach somebody from outside world, like on LinkedIn, some
Yeah.
expert, and talk to
Yeah.
them? Have you ever done this?
Sure. So we're a company that's growing. We're operating outside of Europe, and it's like, okay, so how do I convince a client who is based in South Africa or Singapore that I am worthy of even an announcement? And there was a person I knew from a long time ago, and I knew he was living in Singapore at the time, and I thought, I'll look him up. I hadn't spoken to him in years. And that proved to be a dead end. He was doing something else, wasn't going to work for me. But in the process of doing that, I came across another person. And I just thought, what's my in? I thought about this for about a week. What's my strategy and how am I going to do this? And I just picked up the phone and dialed the number on LinkedIn and said, "Are you Junior?" And he's like, "Yeah, that's me. Who are you?" Listen, I'm interested in it. So we jumped on I think it was Teams or Zoom, I can't remember. And we talked for ages, and it clicked. And so we kind of affiliated with each other. So now we're partners, and we did the same thing with people in the UK, the US. So we've got a footprint in Asia, Africa, EMEA, North America, now Latin America as well, just by our primary driver of using LinkedIn. And who do I know there? And it's the same when it comes to, new business generation and everything else. We could spend an absolute fortune on marketing and adverts, but here's the thing: people don't like adverts. All you got to do is ask YouTube about that, right? I'm not interested. You remember Alza, great company, really profitable, but you remember them for all the wrong reasons, right? In case you don't know the alien with the alien accent. And so you're starting off on a negative there. But what's the worst thing that can happen is they ignore you. Okay, that's a redirect. Not everybody's on LinkedIn every day. So you got to be patient on that one. But don't just contact one, contact a lot. Speak to a lot of people. Don't be frightened to talk to people. And I think post-pandemic, everybody is. We're so used to Slack or anything. We rarely talk to anyone. Go do that. And that's a sign of confidence. You might be nervous. It's good to be nervous. But go ahead and do it. That's called bravery. Sometimes it's stupidity, but, you don't decide that. Somebody else does.
You mentioned transferable skills, but all of them kind of sounded like soft skills to me. And they should be kind of like a natural skills that you should have.
Well,
but what about like technical skills, which are transferable? I'm not talking about Excel, but
that's how the world works. Technical skills. It depends what you want to do, right? There's what you want to do, what you need to do, and what you have to do, right? So what you have to do in order to get what you want to do is swallow your anxiety and nerves and get ahead and learn it. Whatever that skill is. Everybody's talking, if you Google top skills for business, you'll see software, coding, everything. These are all very general things. But it depends on, I'd say the one critical skill is communication. And people don't communicate because they broadcast. Here's my message. And I think a lot of people fail to understand the communication principles. And I'm not talking about what software you use or anything else. I use, for those that have been in these training courses with me or heard before, I use a dating principle, which is the same as a job interview, where how you speak depends on what you believe about yourself, not what you think about yourself, not what your reputation is, but what you believe about yourself. And that's a feeling. Beliefs come from feelings, right? And feelings produce thoughts that produce behavioral indicators. So if you're in a one-to-one situation, how I'm talking is based on how I think about myself. But the other parameter that's going on is what I think about you, right? And the third one is the most complicated one, which is what I think you think about me. That's all going on in me. And on the other side of the table, that's going on in you. So what we have is two people working on biases that they have no idea about. Only their own creative perception dictates how they communicate, which is why communication rarely works. Instead of moving away from these pretexts and talking about needs and interests, so here I'm here to talk about this because I want to talk about leadership, but I'm also spreading a message, right? That's why I'm here. Okay, what's your message? Well, learning's all about you. do that. Try it. Don't think about too much. Just do. It'll work or it won't. If it doesn't work, try something different. That's it. That's the message. Don't wait. Get on with it. Just so you know, you don't have to stay on for the rest of it if you don't want to. Communication is not a key. I hate saying that. There's lots of keys everywhere on communication is a skill. Communicating with yourself, communicating with others. Being able to communicate your needs and interests. So what I need isn't necessarily what I want. Right? What I want, to get to what I want, I have to go through a set of needs. So I need to do interviews. I need to do skill development. I need to communicate with people I might not like. I need to get through all of those things that generate enough experience. And the experience is the transferable skill. I don't think that anybody's going to get a job on technical skills alone. Because you've got to go through an interview process. If you have to go through speaking to a human, then you have to be able to communicate from a place of honesty and confidence. And confidence is also saying, I don't know. And confidence is saying, you know what, we've had this conversation for 20 minutes now and I don't think it's going okay in the interview, and ending it. There's nothing wrong with that. But people go, why'd you do that? Well, it didn't feel right, so I'm going. And I think people are frightened. We get into so much trouble about transferable skills by saying yes to stuff so quickly instead of saying no or not yet. And I've seen that all the way through in IBM as well, where people were so in a hurry to get to the dizzy heights of first-line management, where you're all seeing all-powerful. Not true story. You're not all seeing and all-powerful, and you just have lots more to do. And I kept wondering, what's the rush? And then when they get there, they find out this is not what I like. But they're frightened to step down or move to the side to a non-people role or a different role because it looks bad. Actually, it doesn't look bad at all. It's just how everybody navigates their career. Maps that people drop, maps and squiggly lines on a map. Well, you can draw your own doing that. So transferable skill for me is always going to be communication.
Well, let me touch on the bubbles.
Yeah.
I've been with IBM for 13 years, right?
Yeah.
And many of my friends, colleagues,
Uh-huh.
are still within the same department when I started.
Sure.
And there's no offense, right? But they kind of are in their own bubble.
Yeah.
Like same processes, same colleagues, or okay, people change, but
Yeah.
you are still within the same, and you are not so aware of what's going on outside.
That's right.
So they might not be aware what is actually relevant on the job market in case they want to change. So how should they start? To learn what's out there.
Well, I think a lot of people are frightened to look at the job market because being in IBM for such a long time, it was very scary for me to contemplate leaving. But everything that was available to me at that time was just different. It wasn't development. It was more experience, and I didn't need that. Or maybe I did, but at the time I just felt like I don't want that. I don't want different experience. I want to learn. I want to grow. And it was very scary to look outside. And I did look outside, and I looked at salaries, and I looked at, what are they getting paid over there? What am I getting paid? What I'm doing now? Some of it was higher, some of it was the same, some of it was lower. And I didn't really know my value. What was that? That's why I kind of looked at that. But I think a lot of people restrict themselves to like Glassdoor, which is basically a lie. There's nothing. Anonymous feedback is not relevant. Go out and have a look. And just look around at the sort of jobs that are going on in the marketplace and have a look at what they're actually asking for. And I think a lot of people scroll down and they go, right, okay, I've got all of this, but they need 5 to 7 years, and I've only got 4.5 years experience. Apply anyway. Do it for the interview process. Do it for the validation that where you're at's good for you, or the validation of, actually, there's this chance for me that I didn't expect. Let me have a look at it and have that, again, an honest conversation with yourself, because it's not about, blindly loyal to a brand. I think you have to be loyal to yourself. And I certainly know 5 or 6 people that have gone out of IBM that have come back. I mean, I've come back in a different form. Where you know, you're going to get different experience and different things. And when I joined this next company, I really got a shock because the climate was completely different. I don't know how to do something, so I'm going to ask somebody was really frowned upon. You know, it was like, you know, you don't just randomly speak to somebody in a different department and, hey, you know, we're trying to do this, can you help? Because it was about prestige, you don't do that. And it was like, okay, that seems very strange for me. So I didn't last very long in that department. I transferred to a different one, which was less of that. But I had a higher, bigger challenge to do. But to be honest, I think I bit off too much. And then eventually just decided that, you know, what I'd learned was enough and it wasn't going to be more than that. And it was just recognizing the value in the marketplace. And it, you know, a lot of that time it was like, should I just go back to IBM because I knew that. But again, I wasn't going back to a development. It was shying away from a development path that I had. So have a look around. Go try. If it's good for you, then go for it. If it's not good for you, don't. But you should at least look. You know, everybody looks at, you know, when you get your food in a restaurant, you look at somebody else's and think, probably I should have ordered that. You know, it's not hurting anybody. It's just being there. And I think if you're honest, then that's okay. You know, there's the ways in which you tell your manager that you've got a job interview. I think a lot of people lie and they go sick that day. Or I think if you've got a healthy relationship with your manager that says, listen, there's this chance for me. I want to go and look at it. I'm doing it for the process. You know, people think that might harm my career. Well, yeah, it might. But it also might harm your career to not do it. So you have to decide what you want to do.
So you work with different companies, you talk to CEOs, HR partners, whatever. So what are like 3 top skills or values that they're looking in a candidate?
It's going to be really cliche: integrity, competency, and communication.
And do you think that this interpersonal match is always required there? Because there's a lack of people on the job market. So can you kind of lower your expectations as an employer to get the job done, to hire someone just because of his skills? Or is it a big risk to hire someone if there is not this match interpersonally?
Look, you know, we all have biases, right? And we're always going to have preferences on who we want to work with, and we're always going to have people that we like. But it depends on what you're looking for, and it's a trade-off between the relationship that you were looking for as well as the requirement to deliver. And there's always going to be people who you don't get along with, and there's all, you know, anybody that's listening or watching will always know that there's one person in that team that is memorable for the wrong reasons. But as long as they're not compromising the integrity of the team and they're operating at a level which is sufficient and they're delivering, then that's okay. But you've got to question, how scalable is that? And the longer you keep them in a role where they are frustrating others or not collaborating with others properly, then you've screwed up. So the trade-off for me is if I'm looking for something that needs to be done and it's a short-term thing, I'm more interested in the skill and the integrity of the individual. But if there's a question mark around both, I won't do it. But I won't hire the person who is overconfident or overskilled. I'd rather look for somebody who is quietly confident of what they do, but they might not be the best communicator. I'll go for that because I'm hiring them to do a job, and the communication thing, we learn that as we go. But again, attitude and willingness to learn trumps everything, if you've got the time.
Let me touch on the failures, right? Or a fear to fail. Because you said, like, look around, approach your network, look what's on the job market. But many people fear to step out of their comfort zone, right?
Sure, yeah.
They fear to fail the interview process, or they fear to fail that they might dislike the job, or that it could be a wrong step. Yeah. So how can you prepare for this failure or avoid failing?
By not binary calling anything success or failure. You see, again, we're this product of institutionalization, where all the way through school we're tested and we're focused on what we're doing negative, right? We've all seen that cliche, you know, the 9 and they got the number 1 wrong and they're focusing on the 1 and all this other stuff and about motivational speaking. Forget that. What we've got to focus on is how much progress you're making and how much growth you're having in yourself. I'm not a believer in stepping out of my comfort zone. Because, if your comfort zone's this kind of circle and you step right out of it, all you've got is stress and anxiety because you don't have, as humans, we need certainty. We don't have, as mammals, we need comfort. But if you step right out of your comfort zone, all you're doing, if nothing is familiar to you, you just raise your stress level. And when you're stressed, you make brilliant decisions, don't you? Of course you don't. You usually make the wrong ones because you're anxious and you react as opposed to thinking and acting clearly. So what I tend to do is I grow my comfort zone by doing one or two things that I've never done before and just to experience that from a place of confidence. So comfort for me is a confidence zone. I know what I know and I know what I don't know, right? And I don't know what I don't know. So I can do something about the two things, the first two things. I know what I don't know, so I can learn that. Yeah. And I know what I know, so I can refine that. What I don't know about, life's going to show me. And it's going to show me in the format of not getting a job I want, meeting people who don't like me. And that's part of life, right? And I'm not saying that doesn't hurt and that's not annoying. Of course it is, but I think a lot of people give that emotion a big hug and hold on to it, and that's an excuse to not try. I think picking one or two things that you're not done before, just go ahead and try it. And having an expectation of, I'm doing this for the experience, not I must win, I must succeed, because you put yourself under so much pressure there. This is where the flip side of the coin to a growth mindset comes, because a growth mindset isn't always about growing. A growth mindset's all about what are you learning and evaluating along the way. And it's the experience through over that period of time that's more valuable to you than the end result, because it's the experience you remember, not the rating. And I think we're all focused on results matter. Yes, they do, but how you get there is where the personal growth happens. So don't jump outside your comfort zone. Don't go and randomly do something you've never done before, because that's not going to work. You're just going to be stressed, nervous, and anxious. It reminds me of a manager, I won't name them, but this person wasn't very good at delivering presentations. So as part of a development program for her, he wanted me to mentor her during my IBM days on how to deliver a proper presentation. So his development plan for her was to do 6 different presentations in front of his senior management team. Logic, right? You're not good at something, you practice at it. But here's the thing. Wasn't that she wasn't good at it. She could create a presentation, quite the thing. She just became so much overwhelmed by public speaking that she couldn't talk. So the problem wasn't delivering presentations. The problem was confidence in her and her ability to talk. So all that practice was doing was reinforcing that she wasn't good at anything. So it's killing her motivation. So if you're practicing something that you're not good at over and over and over, that's just more stress. How do you expect that to grow? You're not gonna. So you've got to think about, what am I trying to achieve here? And again, this is one of the things we laugh at in our programs, where even in the simplest classroom activity, I ask everybody to stand up, move to the. So I number them off, or if I'm feeling kind of crazy, I use letters into different groups. And there's like 4 flip charts around the room, and I say, right, okay, it's a flip chart activity, let's go there. And they get up and they go. And I was like, okay, so why are you going? Because you told us to. Yeah, but do you know what I'm asking you for? No. So you've just volunteered, you've just spent time, energy, and effort on something that you have no idea what the outcome should be, whether you're qualified to do it, whether you've got experience to do it, or anything else. Maybe you should ask questions first. But we're frightened to ask questions because everything's prescribed to us. So staying curious involves asking questions of why. But most people associate why with a negative connotation. I mean, you've got kids, so do I. Why? It can get quite nerve-wracking. But asking why, a better one is like, okay, what does good look like for you at the end of all this? What's the purpose? What's the outcome that's desired from this activity? And then you get some clarity on what a vision should look like. That's where vision comes from, folks, an idea. And then we can build up a plan around how do we realize that vision, and then we can build up missions that contribute towards that overall plan. And then, hey, by the way, you've just got a vision, plan, and mission. And it was like, what's the strategy? Strategy is a kind of idea how you fulfill the mission. Sorry, fulfill the vision. All right, okay. People get very confused about that. But you've got the same thing, right? You do that in your private life. Say, hey, I want to try this, or I'm going to go on holiday there because I think it might be cool. That's a vision. What's the strategy? I'm going to save up enough money and get the right time off to do it, and I'm going to do this, 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 and this. Okay, now what's your plan? How to execute getting time off? That's a mission, how to execute. So we break it down. We do that in our life all the time. I think we just put too much complication around it. This is why we try to simplify things. Life is simple and should stay simple, but simplicity doesn't mean easy, and I think that's what people mistake simplicity for.
Mm. Let me try a specific example. If you were a mentor, what advice would you give me? Imagine my wife is on a maternity leave.
Yes.
I have a mortgage.
Yes.
My job is not fulfilling me.
Yes. Right.
And I find it very risky to change the job.
Yes.
What would you advise to me?
Let's have a conversation on what is not fulfilling for you.
Everything. I hate the team. I hate the work.
Yeah, so these are all symptoms of you. I think one of the reasons we developed this non-algorithmic psychometrics assessment. Now, you can do a psychometrics assessment online, and you can do MBTI profiling, which you shouldn't waste your money on because it's been debunked. You can do strengths inventories. You can do all of these things, but they're algorithm decision trees. So you answer this, it takes you down this path and puts you into a bucket. And, there's a lot of, I went through a lot in IBM, and it kind of comes out to say, I'm a red person. Okay. What does that mean? Oh, my colleague's a yellow one. So what? We join and we're yellow or orange, or what does that mean? What do I do with that? We developed a non-algorithmic psychometrics assessment, which looks at 3 aspects of you, right? What do you believe about yourself? What do you think about yourself? And how do you feel about yourself? And then we look at these holistically, and we pinpoint the root cause of the problem. And this gives a solid foundation to start with that says the reason for your frustration, the real reason for it, is a feeling of unfulfilled, and I'm over anxious because of the mortgage. My wife's on maternity leave. I have to, we have to live. So I'll react by changing jobs. I might get a pay increase by going somewhere else. And in 2 or 3 years, I'm in the same process again. And the majority of people in life do that. And then they say, well, I've got a good job, it's stable, I've got good money, I should be happy, right? But, and there's that but. And I've been there, it's like in IBM, it was really a really great job. And then when I moved to the other company, it was a really, really good paid job. And it was kind of like, I should be fine, right? And I'm not. So we developed this 23 questions to answer that. And from there, we talk about, okay, so these are the things that you are naturally fulfilled by. Where can you find that work? And that's where I work with the mentee to look at what are the options. And there's obviously some parameters around that, like I don't want to travel, I want to be at home, and we narrow down to, okay, so you're going to have to spend your days doing this, this, and this, and the majority of jobs that do that is probably this. And here's a network to go and investigate. Here's the referrals to talk to. Go speak to somebody that works there and have a think about whether that's going to work for you. And we go through this process that can last, sometimes it's only 2 or 3 engagements, sometimes it's a year. It depends on the complexity that's there. And also, okay, so what do we do with your, there's an element of coaching, mentoring, psychometrics in there, but there's also neuro-linguistic programming that's involved in that as well, all during a conversation much like we're having now. And we talk about, okay, so how do we stabilize your finances? How do we create a financial bridge for you to move to a different role, different lifestyle? What are those things? How does your wife feel about this? What are your options in terms of the mortgage? Can you move? Do you want to move? Whole different holistic view on things. And then we create a plan that's co-created that says, look, this is what we're left with. If you want a path to fulfilling life and away from what you're doing right now, we're going to have to make some decisions that are not easy, but will lead you to fulfillment. But I think many people are just looking for a quick solution to move.
So we're talking about mentoring.
Yeah.
And many IBMers do have their mentors within IBM.
Sure.
Which might not always be super objective, right? Because of the previous experience or whatever reason.
Yep.
So how would you find an external mentor? Are there any networks, companies? How would that work?
Well, I'm not going to shamelessly plug. You could just look up me. I'll give you the phone number now. LinkedIn as a social media platform is pretty limited. It used to be a professional networking platform, but it's not anymore. The problem is that mentors and coaches are 10 a penny anywhere. Finding a mentor and a coach externally is easy. You Google it, and in the first, even if you Google or even on LinkedIn, if you search mentor coach Slovakia, you're going to have nearly 1,000 entries, and most of them are in Bratislava. That's a lot, right? Anybody can, because coaching is a non-regulated industry. Anybody can call them that, right? Okay, there's certifications, like gold standards and stuff like that determine the process they're going through, but that doesn't mean that they're actually any good. It's much like how do companies recruit? The strongest recruits that you get are through a referral process. So you ask around, but there's also this myth that somebody thinks they should only have one mentor. Well, you have mentors for a lot of different things for a period of time, depending on what you want to learn. You have a skill mentor, you have a career mentor, you have a life mentor. You can have whatever you want to label that, and that's fine. But go out into the marketplace, and by the way, every mentor or coach should give you a free consult. And that free consult is where you are asking a lot of questions about their process, how long have they been experienced, what are some of the referrals, can I do one coaching session for free? And a lot of people get very uncomfortable with that, and they say, no, you need to buy a package of 10. And I wouldn't give them your money. You control that relationship. This is the thing that people give control away. Mentors are there to serve. And as long as the mentee feels that there's value in that relationship, it should continue. If there's no value in that relationship, then don't continue. And a lot of people are like, okay, let's meet next week. And people just go along with that. My view on it is, here was our plan. We've reached it. Is there a need for this relationship anymore? Then think about it and let me know. I think you've got to be objective into what it is you're actually learning. So as I say, a mentor inside the company is really good, right? Because they're supposed to help you navigate, create a network, introduce you to people that help you, add to their network. But it's also about learning a very specific skill. And if you don't have a mentor inside the company, that's naive. But if you're only reliant on that one and you expect that one to help you navigate the job market, that's not realistic. Headhunters do not help you navigate job markets. Headhunters are looking for filling a position because that's why they get paid. Some of them get paid by the number of applicants, some of them get paid by the number of placements, and some of them get paid by the number of people who pass their trial period, right? The question you've got to ask is, which one are they? And how you know that is you ask them. If they don't want to talk about it, then I wouldn't trust them. So do your research. Do your research. And get one external and internal. Thing is, with the external one, you have to pay them.
So let's divert
from
this topic a little bit.
Sure.
And let's talk about you a little bit. I've known you for 10 years, and I can see also your progress, how you've grown in all aspects. So what would you advise to people what resources they should use to kind of grow, what books to read, what podcasts to listen to? I don't know, what sessions they should take,
Yeah, I mean, that's a broad one. Again, it depends on the context of where you want to find yourself. And, is that cliche, where do you want to be in 5 years? My answer to that one is alive. I have no idea what I'm going to be doing in 5 years. What I usually ask to start as a strong starting point is, who are you? Most people can't answer that question because they'll answer, I work at IBM, or I work at... That's not what I asked you. I asked you, who are you? And that's a soul-searching, hard question. And then it's like, right, so who do you want to be? And for who? Because if you're changing for someone else's sake, then that's not going to work.
So what do you do personally?
I look at all, so I've got 4 kids. One's an adult, so he teaches me a lot about the generation now working in non-corporate environments. He's a chef. The other three are age 7, 5, and 4. 5.5 and 4. And they teach me a lot. They're like a mirror of all of the worst aspects that I cannot stand about myself, because kids reflect your behavior. So, you know, when you've had a bad day and you raise your voice, they'll do the same. They'll look at it, or we always turn into our parents. And I, as much as I really respect my parents, there's some behaviors that I really don't want to pick up. So self-reflection, true self-reflection. There's a really good book I recommend for everybody. It's called From Values to Action. It's kind of an old one. It's not the fanciest, and it's written by a guy called Harry Kramer Jr. For those that don't like reading books, there's a 40-minute YouTube or 50-minute YouTube that gives you the context. It's about being true and honest to yourself. And I read it the first time. Yeah, sure, okay, I am, but I wasn't really. So it took a lot to look at myself. So self-reflection. Then, decision what I want to learn. What do I want to learn? And then I make the mistake of always trying to connect what do I want to learn to my vocation, right? So I've got to grow in skill and development because I've got to constantly evolve to make myself stay relevant in the marketplace. The same as every employee anywhere. Doesn't matter if you're a business owner like me or an employee somewhere else. So I always think, what would be my next best thing? Should it be, should I go for a next level of coaching certification? And I overthink it a lot. Instead of just saying, I like that, I'm going to figure that out. I'm going to be interested in that. I'm going to find out how that works. And I pick up books on it all the time. So the first book, From Values to Action. Second book, I'm not even going to try and pronounce the name because they're Japanese. The Courage to be Disliked. It's written in a kind of strange way. It's like reading a movie script. But it's about the courage of self, and that not everybody's going to like you, and accept that. That's that book. Then there's another one which is going to completely surprise you, right? It's called How to Talk to Little Kids So That They'll Listen. And it's always about communication, right? Because when you have to say something for the 5th or 6th time so that they actually acknowledge, and they heard you the first time, they just, ignored you. That can be really quite frustrating. So it's really about how to talk to somebody in a way that is encouraging, yet, articulate, clear, and it's the best communication tool ever. That doesn't mean that I patronize everybody that I'm talking to as a kid. I don't talk that way. It's just about understanding the only difference between kids and adults is the size of their body. The emotions are all the same. As we grow older, we should be able to identify what those emotions are, but kids, they don't. And one of the biggest compliments that actually a kid can give you is when they absolutely lose it after being at kindergarten all day, and there's this outburst of emotion, and you're getting it. And the temptation to, as the parent, to override that, and that was bad behavior, you shouldn't do that, and everything else. This is natural. Instead of actually seeing it as this person felt safe to have that conversation happened to be an emotional outburst. If we take that into, for example, a one-to-one, where a staff member who's upset feels okay to rant and lose it in front of you, that's actually a compliment that they feel okay to do that. It doesn't mean that what they say is correct. It doesn't mean that it's directed at you. Most of the time as a supervisor, it's not about you. And you want to try and fix that. You can't. You just got to be there to listen. So that would be my third book, How to Talk to Little Kids So That They'll Listen. And that itself is kind of 3 dive into books that you don't need to deal with. And then the last one, which is my favorite one, it's called Bluffocracy. There's really small books about this big. Trouble is I've lost my copy because it's only that big. Where it talks about true skill development in depth. Now, a long time ago, as much as I don't like to represent this, a long time ago, we used to talk about T-shaped development. So you'd have a depth of knowledge in one particular, or maybe 2 particular areas, and a breadth of awareness and knowledge of what's going on around you. And that's fine as long as you know that that's your depth of organization. Trouble is, in a lot of academia and a lot of in the process of trying to be aware of everything, we have developed a lot of breadth, and people then start to believe that they become an expert because they know about something. And you need to read the book, because what it'll do is it'll help you navigate your stakeholders on who's the person who thinks or believes they know what you actually do, who can talk a good talk but can't actually deliver, and who's the person who can't really talk about it but can actually deliver.
Okay, so time is up, so let's conclude, Fraser.
Yeah.
Imagine we are in an elevator, so let's do an elevator pitch.
All right.
And summarize it in very short time.
Okay, I'll do my best.
To be how to be held accountable, or how to
self-accountable. Mm-hmm. So know what it is that you're getting into. What does good look like at the end of that? Know what it is that you're going to do and why you're doing it, and know when you're done. That's ultimately accountability. If something goes wrong, you've had a part in that. Stand up, admit it, work through the problem and resolve it. Doing that in everything you do is going to help you progress, grow, develop, and certainly make you more resilient for whatever's going to happen in life. I like to think of three things. I'm trained, right? And I've got practice, I've got experience, and I'm ready. Accountability helps you be ready for what's coming, wherever that is, whatever that's going to bring to you. You've always got skills and a network to fall back on.
For sure, I wouldn't be able to summarize it better. So thank you, Fraser, for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's been a great conversation. And guys, I believe you enjoyed it as well, and that you're going to take something from it. So please, if you did, leave a comment. I will be very happy for your feedback. And thank you, Fraser, once again for coming.
Thanks very much. Thanks, guys. Have fun.
Thank you.